how dare you? What about the smaller income earner, the people that want to be able to get into a home?
So does that mean all of our VA buyers are just going to have to go into the deal without representation?
It's not about Republican or Democrat. It's about, let's be sensible. And Colorado has really lost its traction on sensibility for the common good.
Get you some reading glasses from Costco. They sell them three packs because it's going to take you a few days to get through the ballot. The title of the bill is misleading. It's not just cause eviction. There is no eviction.
Stop perpetrating lies to the American people and to the consumer, and no, the prices of housing are not going to go down because of the commissions.
What's the commission that these class action attorneys are receiving on these multi-million-dollar settlements? I've heard upwards of... Good morning. Welcome to our April issue of the Policy Pulse podcast. I'm here with Dr. Clarissa Thomas, and we're going to be talking about some of the things that we discussed in our public policy meeting on Monday, as well as some other issues that might be front of mind for some of our members. So there are some bills that have made it through the process, and they're on the governor's desk to be signed, and some other ones that are getting close. So would you like to address any of those? We don't have time to do all of them.
Right, but I think that one that we should throw out there for some of our interested members, it's a big one. Our industry was on a monitor, but that was the just cause for eviction. And like I said, we were on monitor, House Bill 1098. I always get the numbers mixed up. But that was a tough one. As an industry, we went at it on an amend. I think based on the traction the legislation had last year, we knew that it was coming back in full force. They had a tremendous amount, and they meaning the proponents had a tremendous amount of folks that jumped into the bill as co-sponsors. And so the reality hit our industry pretty quickly that this is inevitable. Just cause for eviction is going to be a deal, and it's going to be a done deal. And so let's make sure that this legislation is as livable and tolerable for our property managers, our homeowners that have rentals, and let's work with it. Part of what we've been saying is it's tough as a housing industry and building community, property management sector, that we're perceived to be the bad guys. And so when we're working on amendments, I think one of the things that became visible pretty quickly is that we were going to be, I think, siloed as best as I could put it. And so the amendments that we obtained were, to appease the Colorado Association of Realtors and its members, but then it kind of leaves out, one of our main components of our industry, and that's the property management sector. And so when the legislation was said and done, and it was sent to the governor on the 10th, so last Friday, it's awaiting his signature, but we've been told that they were even lobbying for some amendments. They, meaning the governor's office, had their own proposed amendments. And so they secured those amendments as we did. And so it kind of neutralized the governor from potentially vetoing this, and it neutralized the realtors from continuing to fight on making different requests on changing the legislation. I believe the Apartment Association might have secured some amendments as well. And again, I say, it left our coalition of landlords and property managers kind of, still fighting, being the lone voice on their opposition. So we tried. It's a tough one. That's what I said. It's a tough pill to swallow. But in essence, and you could describe it best. We've talked about this before, but it doesn't make it easier for those that own properties that are rentals to be property managers or rental owners, so to speak. It puts a lot more burden of responsibility on those that have those sorts of properties to go through the processes and procedures to evict individuals. And, eviction is not a fun thing, but the one big amendment for us was reducing the time of notice. And I think we were down to 90 days versus 6 months, I think, in essence, is what they had started. And pretty much, unless you're selling your property, that just cause for eviction becomes very complicated, because if you're a long-standing good tenant, you're pretty much insured and guaranteed that you're going to be at a property.
Even if you're a long-standing bad tenant,
Right.
you could be guaranteed that you
Right.
stay there.
So,
And let's be honest, the title of the bill is misleading. It's not just cause eviction. There is no eviction. The bill is addressing when your lease is up, when the tenant's lease has ended. They're calling that a just cause eviction. It's not an eviction. The lease is up. The term is over. There is no eviction, but that's what they called it. And that's the language they're using to mislead the public on this particular bill.
right.
Which
That's
is a
what
little disturbing.
Right, and that's why I said eviction is not a fun process.
Right.
So if somebody's getting evicted, it's because there's already reasons why somebody's being asked to vacate a premise.
Yes.
But this one, unless you're selling a property, I mean, bluntly put, unless you're going to give notice that you're selling your property, then you're not really going to get rid of
Which is
the occupant.
right, which is interesting because there's another bill out there that they're trying to get through called right of first refusal and right of first offer. And if you happen to have, it's a multi-unit property, but you happen to have at least one tenant in that property that's been on rent assistance, then you're going to have to make that property available for the local government entity to put an offer in on your property. And there are a lot of other restrictions that the listing broker may have to comply with that violates our license law. So there's a whole lot of things, and these bills are tied together, a tangled web we weave.
Right. I mean, it's been a tough session, to say the least. I think we're down to the wire. 3 weeks left, maybe. May 8th is the day when the legislature will close for a few months to focus on their reelection campaigns, and those that are not running for reelection, obviously open seats, vacancies, et cetera. But our industry has quickly realized that, coalitions are important. And working on legislation and amending legislation to make it livable and palpable is probably the top priority. Because under current environment that we're all in Colorado, it's a done deal. Pretty much, if something has a big, broad swath of support from the Colorado legislature, then it's going to get passed. The one saving grace that we've seen this year is that there's a lot of bad legislation that's almost stalling in appropriations because of the budget predicament in Colorado. There's not that much money to be able to siphon off to all these different projects that carry hefty fiscal price tags. So that's been comforting, although not every single bill carries a price tag because there's, very little to no impact on the state coffers, right? There are administrative programs that the burden of responsibility falls on, say, an industry like the real estate industry or, anybody else. So those don't fall under the same category. But like I said, it's been a tough one to swallow. I think that one of the bills that got signed on Monday was the limits on housing occupation or occupants. And that one is another one that we're not sure what it will entail, because there was a little bit of this discussion last year with that big package of land use override at the state. And so when they parsed out all these different issues into their own different pieces of legislation, that was one of them. You're taking away local control. They're saying local control is still given because it'll be up to the local jurisdictions, but not really. The state gets to decide those occupancy limits, right? And so there's a lot of unintended consequences that really haven't been thought out. But yet the intention, we know the intent in all of this is pretty much, pushing more people to live into certain units to accommodate another burgeoning crisis that a lot of people don't want to talk about, and that is the immigration crisis that we're all faced with right now. So that leads us into the one topic of concern, and that is, help me out on this one.
1337?
Yeah, it's rent control disguised as 1259. Sorry about that. And the title of the bill really has little to do with the actual impact on the bill, but it has to do with declaring an emergency or disaster. So a governor declaring an emergency declaration, blah, 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 whatever, however it's titled. And so a lot of the concern, even within our industry, and that's being heard next week in committee and in the Senate side. It's already gotten passed on the House side. And so the concern is that a bill like this would actually, say if the governor declares an immigration crisis, then it would freeze what rents can be fixed at or collected at.
Yeah, or charged market rate.
Right, and so as we have all felt during the COVID declaration, that lasted 3 years. And so will a governor's emergency declaration on housing last in perpetuity, right? And so it's not that we don't want to be compassionate about what we have being faced, but at what point do private property rights get usurped to the extent that people's property is no longer their property, right? Their property right. So that's why I said it's kind of like a grim tone to everything that we're dealing with right now, but elections do have consequences, and we have a primary election coming up in June, then a general election. The stakes are pretty high, and again, we're concerned with private property rights and ensuring that our industry is protected, that our homeowners are protected, and that dream of homeownership keeps flourishing. And so we need to get behind candidates that truly understand what a private property right is, and that it's not taking away from those that have worked really hard for their private property rights and giving them away to other people, because we keep seeing it happen.
Well, and you mentioned the fiscal impact of some of these bills that we're hoping they'll not be funded or not make it out of committee and make it to the floor. There's also the economic impact that is going to be on the marketplace. It's going to be on the landlord, the homeowner, that is going to cause way more effects. And in my opinion, it's going to drive people out of the marketplace in Colorado, and the landlords will take their money and they'll go to another state and they'll invest it there where they do not have to deal with these laws that put so many burdens on the landlord and very few on the tenant, and make it to where it doesn't make sense to own a property because the liability is too high and the reward's not there. It's not worth investing.
Yeah, I mean, and the reality in Colorado right now is not just even the government kind of clamping down on people's ability to own, right, housing. This notion of affordability and attainability is really at a crossroads in Colorado, because the government keeps barging in, and they keep driving up with all these regulatory burdens. They're driving up the cost of housing, and they're doing it thinking that they're actually helping the cost of housing. And so when all that is implemented, or those policies are fully to the point that we start feeling and reaping those benefits, so to speak, people are going to realize that it's not very affordable. And it's not very affordable because it's not that our industry is making it unaffordable. Housing developers are making it unaffordable. It's the regulatory burdens on housing and development that are making it unaffordable. And so we have that, to deal with. Plus the fact that we have the wildfire situation that's happening in Colorado. The one bill that we have talked about, because it's another one of the few bills that we're on full oppose, and that's the point of sale notification on wildfire mitigation, so the certificate and point of sale. It's kind of stalled in appropriations because it carries a hefty note, and so, to be able to implement it and administer the program. That is concerning because it's a mandate from a government agency that would be created to, determine whether you've mitigated your property or not. Mitigation is not a bad thing. People are doing it. I mean, in Colorado Springs and the Pikes Peak region, we've experienced wildfires, and Mountain Shadows community knows very well. The Black Forest community knows very well. Deckers knows very well in Teller County. people know what they need to do to be able to mitigate now that it's there, but it's already working within our, emergency management services, with our fire department, taking advantage of those programs that are available, not telling people this is what you're going to have to do, and this is the price tag that's going to be attached in order to prove that you can sell your property, because it's what the government at the state level is deciding that will be worth. You're going to be able to transact once you can show that you have wildfire mitigation certification. And so all these things sound really good on the surface until they're not, because the burden of responsibility and the cost to the homeowner are unsustainable. So those are things that obviously we are concerned with. And not only that, knowing that in the state of Colorado, insurance rates are going through the roof, and homeowners are going to have to come to the fact and, come to terms with price increases in that. And that is the new normal. I mean, it's not sugarcoating it. It's telling people, you know what, your insurance coverage is going to go up. Car, whatever it is, right? The renewal of your policies, it's probably going to be like 100%. I mean, they're saying that the average is a 40%, 50%. Some people are going to see, when those renewal notices come, 100%, depending on where they live, where the areas of like disasters have happened, because we've had tornadoes in suburban Southwest Denver. We have the Eastern Plains. We've got, massive hailstorms that have been happening. And so all these different things, it's like, we're going to have to pay for it. And so we now have to get used to all that. And what do we talk about? Housing affordability? All that is impacting.
Absolutely.
Because people need to factor that price tag into the purchase of a home now, or their monthly payment if they already are homeowners. So it's the grim reality. And so how do we address it? How do we, make sure that our members and our consumers understand that this is the reality, and it's not the price of homes is going up because of, market-driven forces are one thing. There's all these other unfunded mandates that are happening that are impacting the cost of housing.
Well, on the fire mitigation bill that you mentioned, originally that was going to be for 12 counties that impact mostly with wildland areas. Now it's expanded to all 64 counties in the state. So they're trying to create a one-size-fits-all for the state that is so different in topography and issues as to what you have to do to mitigate, or what you can even do to mitigate. And they don't even have the standards set for what this certificate is going to look like. What do you have to do to comply? Who's going to inspect it? Who's going to monitor it? None of this is put in place. It's just a pie-in-the-sky ideal that sounds great, and people will be, well, yeah, we should have that. But it's not going to work very well.
That's what I said. It's not that we're not concerned about mitigating a wildfire zone or an area that is prone to wildfire, right? Or could be. It's that some of these things you cannot force people into this predicament because of the financial burden. And so we got to do better. And there is a sentiment at the Capitol that if you don't agree with the voices of the majority, then your ideas are not good enough. And that is not good governance.
No, it's not at all.
It's a problem, and citizens, and I think I would impart on our members and even consumers, hey, you can agree to disagree with us politically. That's not it. It's really think about what it's costing all of us. It's not about Republican or Democrat. It's about, let's be sensible. And Colorado has really lost its traction on sensibility for the common good. And that is a result of where elections have led us. And so I think our consumers and our homeowners and our members need to really understand 2024 is a serious note for the trajectory of the state when it comes to what do we want here? Are we really serious about housing affordability and housing attainability? Because this is really not a battle about pushing out builders, to the extremes because they make too much money, or realtors making too much money. This is about focusing on the people that we serve, and we're serving the homeowners. And so do we want to continue allowing and providing people within our state housing affordability and truly being focused on housing affordability, or pretending that we're talking about housing affordability and doing everything that's contradictory to that? And so as somebody that is more engaged in the political, trappings of our state than I'd care to at the moment. It's tough. I mean, our industry really is at a crossroads, and our state is at a crossroads. So folks need to be mindful who we're electing to office, and words are words are definitely hollow for a lot of our elected officials right now, because they love to hear themselves talk, and the sound bites are great, but their actions are really detrimental to good governance in Colorado. And I keep repeating that because it's been painful to watch the session, and something's got to change pretty soon to bring our state to where we used to be, middle of the road, and truly a middle of the road state.
Well, and you mentioned that there's a lot going on this election cycle this year. There are rumors coming out that there could be over 30 ballot measures on the ballot for this year. So you might want to get you some reading glasses from Costco. They sell them three packs. So you got one for each room, because it's going to take you a few days to get through the ballot and read all of these different ballot measures. And hopefully people will read them and go, that doesn't make sense. And really look into it and maybe look at the blue book instead of just saying yes to everything or no to everything.
Well, I mean, a lot of these measures are working their way through the title setting process right now at the state. And so we're hopeful that I think it's 32 up for consideration. There's one that's officially being circulated right now that affects private property rights, that affects property taxation rates. And so that would freeze, and this is obviously in direct response to what's happened with the Gallagher repeal, where we are with raising property taxes in the state of Colorado. People got a sticker shock, obviously, notably so, and they'll still have a sticker shock, because the offset this year was that there was a lot of working arounds to make sure that people felt good about themselves, using Tabor funds to pretty much downplay that blow. And so that easement of taxes will be felt again, and so this initiative would be affixing that rate.
A short-term sigh of relief is going to go away pretty quickly, yes.
So we'll see, but the state of Colorado is a beautiful place to live. This is why it's so attractive, and we need people to pay attention to what's going on politically speaking, past the policy this November, to make sure that we can harness back out of control spending from the state government and truly, impart a good quality of life for the state of Colorado in general.
Well, as you mentioned, they're coming up with the names for these different ballot measures. And as we've already seen in this legislature, they don't always use language appropriately. We're calling it a just cause eviction, and it's not an eviction. So you're really going to have to read the ballot and really try to figure out what it's actually trying to propose. So along those lines, we might talk about the elephant in the room.
Right.
Because, as I said, we could go in for days about all these bills. So the NAR settlement, proposed settlement, it's not finalized yet. It's still in the process, has to be approved by the courts. But there's been some information coming out through NAR and through our local association. What would you like to share about that for our members?
Well, I mean, we say elephant in the room because there's a lot of folks within our industry that are, concerned that, what's in it for me? And that's, we are here to protect the industry, bottom line. The role of the association and NAR and their position is we are here to protect the member, and we are here to protect the Realtor brand. And so going into a proposed settlement is to do just that. The sad reality is that lawsuit after lawsuit was getting filed because, I've said it before, the elephant in the room goes beyond just saying that we are being accused of being, cartel, where price fixing has been going on. And that's far from it. That is like one of the biggest lies perpetrated to our industry. And obviously the consumer falls really quickly into the trap of reading headlines because, what bleeds leads, right? And so we're not price fixing. Our industry has always been an industry of negotiation and contract negotiation. So the fact that some people are believing that the cost of housing is going to go down because commissions are no longer going to be, left up to whatever notion the media has convinced people of, that's not true. No. Commissions will and continue to be negotiated. It's incumbent upon our members to understand, hey, you have to be a good steward of what your profession and your professional standards are, and do your job to sell yourself with your consumer and why you work so hard to be able to be part of this transaction. You have always been a transaction agent in this whole process, whether it's sellers or buyers. Obviously, the point in question here is a buyer's agreement. NAR is doing what they can, obviously, to make sure that realtors harness that ability and do the accredited buyer program. If it's a profession, then be a professional. Take it as put into your job what you want to get out of it, right? And so if you're asking what's in it for me, and I feel like NAR is hanging me out to dry, they're not. They're doing what they can to make sure that your job continues to be protected. At the same time, consumers continue to be protected. We know that the uphill battle has been that the proponents of this, or I should say the prosecutors on this matter, have made it such that they've argued that the consumer gets affected because they're doing this buyer-seller agency, right? This representation. And so what is a buyer going to do now? I mean, they're the ones that are being impacted. It's not at all the seller on this side. And so when they're going at it, when the math is all said and done, what are settlement people going to be able to get out of it? Somewhere along the line, somebody has done the math, and they're saying that it's about $12 to $20. If all these people, because postcards are probably being sent out, hey, if you were ever a part of this transaction, you're going to be able to get some money. What, $20? Oh, woohoo, I'm going to be able to go buy a cup of coffee. And they don't tell that to the consumer. That's not going to make headlines. What's going to make headlines is like they won these multi-million, billion-dollar lawsuits against, the cartel of realtors. And it's like, stop doing that. Stop perpetrating lies to the American people and to the consumer. And no, the prices of housing are not going to go down because of the commissions. Houses are priced according to the market. They are market-driven forces. And so this is what I said, it's up to us, it's up to you, the agent, to educate your consumer, be that resource that you've always been, and know that the Realtor brand is what distinguishes you from a regular licensee. The people that think that they're gonna save a quick buck because they don't have to be members of an association of realtors, well, then that's whatever floats your boat. If that makes you happy, go for it. But you're just a licensee. And so when we're fighting all these pieces of legislation at the state level, at the federal level, it's our advocacy that unites us. It's our advocacy that makes sure that the Realtor brand continues to flourish in our efforts to promote and ensure homeownership. And so, it's okay. We're not telling people it's not a good thing to be a licensee. That's not it. We're all licensed, right? The industry is full of licensees, but those that are members of the Association of Realtors are the ones that choose to be professionally licensed realtors. And so the brand is really important. And so you're joining a brand. It's a profession. I mean, I can't even emphasize how important that is.
Well, and we were just at the Car Spring Summit this past week, and Scott Peterson, the general counsel for CAR, gave a very impassioned 1-hour talk about all of the things that, whether you're a listing broker or a selling broker, that you do during a transaction that your client never sees or never realizes. And his point was, you need to start tooting your own horn and start letting them know what the value is that you're bringing to the table. Right. Because under these settlements and the rate that it's going, they're wanting to do away with buyer representation, which is not going to be good for the buyer. It's not going to be good for the market. And actually, in certain loan products, such as VA loans, the buyer is not allowed to pay any kind of broker fees to represent them. So does that mean all of our VA buyers are just going to have to go into the deal without representation? Does that seem like that's a fair and that's an outcome we want from these things? So there's, again, a lot of unintended consequences. And the thing they never talk about, which I would love to see explained a little more, what's the commission that these class action attorneys are receiving on these multi-million-dollar settlements? I've heard upwards of 30-some%. Do we maybe need to look into that and limit them to say, you get 1% of what the amount is up to $100,000. That's it. Keep bringing lawsuits. Right. That's just me.
I mean, and that's the sad reality of why advocacy is so important, right? That especially in our industry, we are extremely regulated as an industry because we're considered part of the financial services sector. And so it's okay for realtors to be browbeaten by attorneys that have gotten, at the crosshairs of the housing industry. And this is where I tell folks, it's not some sinister conspiracy. It's that I seriously think that there has been a bigger player behind the scenes driving these lawsuits that our agents obviously can't talk about without them being threatened with antitrust. Right. And so attorneys going after our industry are not subjected to the same harassment clauses. And I find it really unfortunate. Realtors cannot defend themselves properly and be vocal about the things that they should be vocal because, it's antitrust. You're crossing paths that you shouldn't because it's antitrust. And it's like, seriously? So every single one of our members has to buckle down and forget about what is the most important thing. The preservation of the industry really relies on our ability to do what we do best. And I mean, our agents are great at representing their clients. And that's where Scott Peterson, legal counsel from the Colorado Association, says, toot your horn. It's not being braggadocious, but make sure that your clients know why you do what you do, what your value is, and what the services you are rendering to them, because that's why you're getting that fee. You're not getting paid, for just hanging out in the process or price fixing something. That is seriously, that's like one of the biggest things. For me, I find it insulting. And so it makes me angry that this is where we are because of politics. And, when they're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and fair housing, especially for this, our industry has been always committed to this fair housing notion, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, who's at a disadvantage? It's the people that can't afford to pay the representation. And so, when all these people at the other side are pushing for all this stuff, those are the folks that are going to be hurt the most. And when the main attorney of the case, and I'm not going to give him, credit because his name doesn't deserve to be thrown out there, but he uses the example of countries like Australia, where only the wealthy can afford representation on the buyer's side. And I said, how dare you? What about the smaller income earner, the people that want to be able to get into a home, so they don't deserve representation? Right. And so that to me is pretentious and asinine that they are pitting, again, class warfare in this, in our country to say that, the have-nots should not have at all. But it's falling on deaf ears because they have been able to paint our industry of realtors as, greedy thugs. A price-fixing cartel. That's their words. Right. And so many publications. And I mean, some people will say, Clarissa, I wouldn't consider them reputable because that's where journalism is. They have portrayed us as being, just all sorts of bad people. And that's not at all what it is. So please, members, do your part to inform yourself on the settlement. It's what is competition.realtor is where all the details that NAR keeps putting out there. They have plenty of resources available. Make sure that you inform your consumers. So you're doing the job. Just do the job a little bit extra by making sure that your clients know exactly what this lawsuit is about, and just disclose it, head on. I know a handful of realtors that have gotten in front of this right away, and things for them won't change. Actually, in Colorado, I'm not sure that things will change that much because we have been a pretty forward-thinking state within our contract laws, and some forms will change, but this is still a proposed settlement, and it'll be July before we know anything is a given. And what we do know is that our Department of Justice in this country continues to go after our industry because, they've been brainwashed into thinking that we're a whole bunch of bad actors, that's why we say the Realtor brand is really important, because our advocacy doesn't stop. So whatever questions we might have, you might have, feel free to reach out to, your local association if you're not a member of PPAR, but this is what we're here for, and we're here to protect your ability to make a living and you continue to being able to represent clients, which is why you got into this industry.
That's correct, yeah. So as you can see, we have a lot going on. We have a lot of issues facing our industry, facing us in the state of Colorado. We're doing the best we can. We need your help to pay attention during elections and to contact your representatives when you get the notices from either PPAR or CAR to do a call to action and notify your legislature that you're not in support of a bill that they're pushing, and see if we can't make a difference and slow this train down and maybe hopefully get it change directions here in the future. So thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next month.